So, in today's episode of Nostalgia Junkies, we are going to be rating 10 classic horror movies
Mm-hmm.
from 1978 all the way up through, I want to say the most recent one was in the 90s.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Fun fact about all these movies, before these last few weeks, I had never seen any of them.
Surprising.
We were on our way to New Jersey Toy Con, and you and Apuzzo
Yep.
started razzing me. I sound old. Razzing me?
Yeah.
Y'all were razzing me.
We were razzing you.
You were ribbing me about this. Y'all were giving me a hard time
Yes,
over
we were.
like not seeing all these movies
Yes.
from the 70s and the 80s.
80s.
Y'all, I was born in 1993, raised by a single mom. We had no cable. We rented VHS. My mom was not going to let me rent Nightmare on Elm Street.
Come on, man. Everyone went to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video, and the horror section was a mile long.
I never watched any of these movies
Yeah.
because we just never saw them. And my mom wasn't into horror. None of my friends growing up were into horror. We were more into playing baseball, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like we played sports and that was it. Let's get into these movies. Why don't we just go with the first one I watched? Because
Okay.
I love this movie. I did not think I was going to love this movie.
I'm glad you did.
Dude, so we're talking about Troll. 1987's Troll.
Yes.
They sent me to this movie, and I'm like, what the hell are you guys talking about? I started watching it 5 minutes into this movie. So I took notes, and I wrote, it's a low-budget labyrinth.
Yeah.
And it kind of is. I like it more than Labyrinth, to be honest.
Yeah.
This was such a great movie. And for me, the best part, the main character's name is Harry Potter, and he wants to become a wizard. And this was like almost a decade before J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, did she just steal this? Like, I feel like J.K. Rowling stole or took some influence from this movie.
It's a little weird, right? The connection now,
Dude,
when you really look
there
at
was
it.
too much. There was a troll in the dungeon basement. He wants to become a wizard, being taught by this older, like undisclosed age witch.
Yep.
Like, seems a little suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, if I'm gonna rank this, it has to be. I'd say a B. It's a B.
Yeah, I for me, it's one of those it's not really scary. It's just
It's like comical.
comical horror, but not really horror. It's just one of those great B movies, man. They just did a good job with it.
I mean, you know who was in this movie, right?
Yeah.
The first acting, Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah.
This was her first like acting role. I think she had like one uncredited appearance
Mm-hmm.
about 10 years before in the 70s, but
The struggle was real for her. She had to run around almost half naked in that movie.
I'm not complaining. This was, it was
Me
a
either.
great scene,
but,
man.
But still, it's like, come on now.
But also when they like tried to make it look like she multiplied herself,
Mhm, mhm.
and so they're just rerunning the same clip
Yeah.
of her running
Do,
through.
do, do, do. With the gold orb.
Yes. It was like, so it's an 80s movie. The special effects were not that great.
But that was pretty impressive with the gold orbs going around trying to fight. Come on now.
I think that the special effects, they're 80s special effects.
100%.
I will say the practical effects.
Yeah, for me, it was funny, right? Because the upstore neighbor goes into the apartment and he's inside an apartment with fake plants and ends up in the woods somehow running after her, which is weird.
The whole like turning them into the cocoons
Yeah.
and the exploding into the neutrals or whatever it was,
Yep.
it was done really well.
Yeah.
And it's like a B plus for me. I'd say
Yeah.
on the higher end of the Bs.
Yeah, I totally agree. I enjoy that movie till this day.
Okay, so our next one,
Okay.
I'm gonna ruffle some feathers with this one. Halloween.
Yep.
I'd never seen Halloween before
Mhm.
this. The OG 1978. I was not a fan of it.
I'm not gonna say I'm not a fan of it, but I can agree what you're gonna say.
It was very slow.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a bad movie. It was a
Correct.
good movie. Like I enjoyed watching it, but all I could think of after watching this movie is how did this movie get all these sequels.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I'm sure the franchise evolved, and I'll be interested to watch like Halloween 2
Yeah.
and 3. But the first one,
Yeah.
it was so slow.
Yeah.
And the dialogue between Jamie Lee Curtis and her friends was like, why is like Jamie Lee Curtis is supposed to be like a responsible high school student? She still sounds like the mom from Freaky Friday.
Correct.
Like, granted, I'm a 90s kid. I grew up on Freaky
Yeah.
Friday, Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, I didn't grow up on Halloween,
Correct.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Correct.
So it was weird to me. And I'm like, how did this movie get so much acclaim?
But for, like I explained, late 70s, for that time period, that was like the perfect jump off for a horror series. It was like that initial introduction to the characters, and then moving forward, film 2, film 3, it gets better.
I can see that. I can see where they're going to continue with this and move forward just as a standalone movie.
Yeah.
For me, I'd say low C, high D.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up.
No.
It doesn't. So I agree. I would say low C for me. I again, it's one of those films you got to watch if you want to get into the series, but it's not the best in the series.
It's a classic.
Correct.
It's a classic, especially if you know the story behind the Michael Myers mask.
Correct.
Like the fact that they ran out of budget, they had no money for the mask, and they just ran down to the party store, the costume shop, and picked up a William Shatner mask.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. Like how this movie was made
Yeah.
is almost more interesting than the movie itself.
Yeah.
But I will say the one thing I remember from this movie, because I watched it with Jocelyn, Jamie Lee Curtis wrestles the knife away from Michael Myers.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Myers collapses to the ground. She's like, oh, it's done. Drops the knife. She runs and hides again. Michael Myers finds her. She wrestles the knife away from him. Drops the knife again.
Mm-hmm.
And then she does it a third time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. You are being chased around the house by this psychotic killer who you've already knocked unconscious twice.
Yeah.
And has gotten up. And when it happens the third time, you drop the knife. No, hold the freaking knife.
But it's one of those things. It's typical horror, right? Everything goes wrong. You're running a mile away from someone and you trip and he catches up. You know, it's just one of those things that it's expected in a horror film, man.
I do love the fact that they were running away from him and he's slowly walking, catching
and
up.
He's still catching up.
It's just that part's funny to me. Thing is, I don't think it was played to be funny.
No, it wasn't.
And for me, that's why it's low C.
Yeah, I agree. Low C for me too.
So the next one that we have, Pet Sematary.
You enjoyed this one, didn't you?
I did like this one. I also really enjoyed them setting up the big trucks on the freeway as like the Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with the Chekhov's gun principle, it's basically an element in storytelling that if there is a gun on stage or they indicate that there is a gun somewhere, it must be used by the third act. Otherwise, it's a failed promise to the reader or the viewer. Like, you can't set up a weapon and then never use it.
Yep.
Because otherwise, it serves no purpose in the storytelling.
Correct.
So as soon as they said, oh, yeah, these trucks are dangerous, it's like, oh, I bet you someone's going to get hit by the truck. And then the cat gets hit by the truck. And it's like, that wasn't a lot. Come on, there's got to be more to this.
Yeah.
But no, I really liked Pet Sematary. I liked the Stephen King cameo. I really liked how the way the father just kind of devolved throughout the entire thing, going crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
Little kid looked like Chucky.
Yeah, it's a little weird, right? It's but it's a good weird though.
Yeah, and so for me, again, I think it's a B. I don't think it's an A quality movie. I would say B.
Yeah, I give it a B plus. It's there. It's it's a lot better than Halloween. It's climbing up in the,
Oh yeah.
you know.
I would say as a horror movie, better horror movie than Troll. I don't know if I would call it a better movie than Troll.
Very interesting.
Because like, I mean, I prefer Troll. I will watch Troll more times than I watch Pet Sematary.
Yeah, but you would only watch Troll because it's not really a horror. It's more of a comedic, like.
I mean, you're not wrong. We'll say it's
Yeah.
we'll say it's even with Troll.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay. All right.
The next one, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty straightforward. Nothing super crazy.
Correct.
Just it's a horror movie.
Yes.
It kind of left me with a similar feeling to Halloween, where it's like, this is the one that started it all.
Yeah. Well, right. Again, they're building up the franchise on this. But for me, as a kid growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, Freddy was the guy I was most afraid of.
Oh, yeah.
He's in your dreams, man. You can't go to sleep. If you go to sleep, you are in trouble. So being a little kid and having watched that movie, and usually you're watching movies at night, you know, with the family on Friday night or in the weekend, and then having to go to sleep with that in your mind. It's like, what?
So, fun fact, all but one of these movies I watched during the daytime because I know I'm a fraidy cat and I would get scared, won't be able to sleep.
Yeah.
When we get to the movie, I'll say this is the only one I was able to watch at night.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you. Like, Freddy is such an iconic character that the essence of Freddy Krueger has permeated
Correct.
throughout all of pop culture.
Right.
Same can be said with Jason. The same can be said with Michael Myers.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's unfair of myself to vote like, oh, but Freddy Krueger's so iconic. Let's put it at an A. The movie was decent. I loved Johnny Depp in the movie.
Yeah.
I think the best part, the special effects.
Yeah.
Special effects were great.
For that time, it's very impressive. Quick question. Freddy or Michael Myers?
Is more iconic or scarier?
Both.
More iconic, I think Michael Myers.
Okay.
Scarier, hands down Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Hands down Freddy Krueger. You can't kill Freddy.
Yeah.
Like that is the scariest thing to me, is the fact that you literally can't kill him and you don't know when you're up from the dream.
Correct.
Like the inception aspect of that movie
is
done
crazy.
At that time
Yeah.
was incredible.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm talking myself into giving it a higher score.
Yeah.
Because I also, like, when Freddy Krueger's coming through the walls, dude, I'm watching this with my pregnant wife.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she goes, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I just look at her. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Baby
She's like,
kicking or
when the baby's
moving.
kicking, it's like, that's what it feels like. I started laughing. And it was probably one of the most scary aspects of this movie, where she's in bed and Freddy's coming through the wall.
Yeah.
I was in tears.
Yeah.
Because all my wife can talk about is how that's how it feels with the baby inside her.
Bathtub scene is kind of scary too.
Dude. All I could think of coming from this movie is I can't wait to watch Alien with her. But you know what? Let's I'm feeling generous. I'd say low A.
Okay. For me, I'm gonna say A as well. That's one of the iconic ones for me.
Next one, The People Under the Stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was one that I thought late of when I was putting the list together, and I was like, I think Alex will like this one. This one is a little weird. It's one of those how we were talking about, one of those thrillers where you're kind of trying to figure out what's really going on. I enjoyed it. Little weird, right? I always as a little kid, I always wanted to live in a big house, right? Where there was actual space between the walls, and you hoping that someday you would find like secret pathways or secret doors. So that whole aspect of the movie is great. Um, I enjoyed it as a kid. I will have to rewatch it. For me, I think it's a B. It's a B.
I agree. There's nothing that's in the movie that's like, oh my god, this is incredible.
Correct.
There's no insane special effect. The practical effects of them kind of looking like zombies was
Mhm.
interesting,
Yeah.
but it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Um, the whole aspect of brother and sister being mommy and daddy together,
hmm
and the daddy running around in a gimp suit.
hmm
There's some very weird,
Weird
tones
stuff.
in this
Yeah.
movie. I will say, I really liked the lines in this movie and the dialogue.
Mhm.
Like when they're trying to break into the house and they're getting attacked by the dog, and Fool Point Dexter goes, "Hey, Fluff Boy, your mother sleeps with cats." And like the fact that the dog responded to it, like was like, "What'd you say about my mom?"
Yeah.
Like, no, the dog's responding because he's getting yelled at. But
Yeah.
like they played it so well. But also, there's a time where the boy is fighting like the evil father,
hmm
and he hits him with the fire poker,
Correct.
and it snaps. And he, for a split second, looks at the poker, and like it's made of wood.
Yeah.
And they left it in the film because it was played so well. But that was a blooper. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Correct.
And it's stuff like that that I think made the movie pretty good. I think it's a B.
Yeah.
I would say right in between Troll and Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
Uh, wasn't anything to write home about. Definitely a movie I would recommend to people. But if you had never recommended it, I probably never would have heard of it.
Correct.
The next one on our list, It.
Mm.
Stephen King's It.
Yep.
I mean, I have nothing bad to say about it other than like the clown costume was weird.
Yeah.
I think with how they revitalized the franchise a couple years ago, I liked that version of the costume a lot more,
hmm
where it wasn't like your party store discount wig.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, right? So it originated in the story, right? He's in like the 1500s or something like that. He was always around. Obviously, towards the end, we know that they're aliens and stuff like that. But that whole clown aspect, it was made to look like a cheap old version, kind of clownish kind of deal.
True, I kind of forgot about that.
You know,
I don't know. I liked the movie. I mean, I'd say it's not really a movie; it's a miniseries.
Stephen King.
Yeah, it's Stephen King. You got nothing bad
Yeah.
to say about Stephen King. I liked the newer one more.
Yeah, I could see that for you. For me, nostalgia base. Me and my sister watch it. I can't even count how many times. Whenever we wanted to watch something scary, it was our go-to. So for me, just for nostalgia base and memories,
Mhm.
I'm gonna give it an A. But Stephen King has so many good ones. But for me, that's one of my favorite Stephen King movies.
Yeah, as a fan of that psychological thriller,
Mm-hmm.
I think that it really does a good balance. It's not a
Yeah.
slasher,
No,
but it's also not a lot of jump scares.
it almost gives you that later on. It's almost like a Sandlot horror.
That's a really good way to describe it. Yeah,
A little group of friends like
Exactly.
Sandlot, but they're going through some horror instead of some summer fun.
agreed. I agree with you. It's an A. I'd say under Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yes, correct,
but
100%.
it's also an A. Next one, let's go with probably the most revered horror movie of all time,
hmm
The Exorcist.
hmm
I want to hear your thoughts on The Exorcist.
Obviously, a lot of these I watched when I was very young. So The Exorcist, and obviously having a church going family, The Exorcist was scary as crap for us.
Mhm.
just the whole aspect of obviously being possessed as a child is very scary. And then you hear, my family's from Puerto Rico. We come from an island, and the stories that come out of island folks is pretty out there. So that combination of it being a child possessed, having a church, following family, I think just gave it that extra oomph. The special effects, I kind of like, coming down the stairs.
360-degree head, like it's
360 coming down the stairs with her head backwards. There were some crazy parts now when you look at it that we can't say, like when she's in the bed and she talks to the priest and she's like,
yeah,
that's
the stuff she says to the priest. And I was just like,
yeah,
wow.
For that time,
Yeah.
It was 80s, right? What, 84, 80? It was in early 80s or mid 80s.
1973. I want to say this was actually the oldest one.
Okay, so 1970. So yeah, for me, I'd like it. It's one of those that actually scares you.
Agreed. And so this is where I feel like I was at a disadvantage going into this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I had never seen any of these movies until these past 2 weeks.
Correct.
This movie, we saw it parodied so heavily because it was like the OG horror movie.
Yeah.
It's been in Scary Movie. It's been in Family Guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's been in how many cartoons and other movies have taken themes of it. When someone's possessed, their head turns around and they throw up. Like that's been like the possession.
Yeah. I mean, most possession exorcist movies take a lot from this. This is like the originator of that genre.
Trope. Yes. Yeah. And so for me, I almost felt like I knew what was going to happen next.
Correct.
Because it's been parodied where all aspects of that movie have been played out.
Yeah.
So watching this movie,
priest is a smoker and
I was just like, okay, cool. So this is what happens next. This is what happens next. That I never felt like I was truly on the edge of my seat for this movie.
Correct.
I felt the intro was really weird with like almost the Indiana Jones beginning.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of explanation of how like that haunted little like runestone then got to that house. Like that really wasn't explained, which I don't think they explain that in like the sequels or if there are sequels. Or
there's obviously now I think there's 5 or 6 exorcists that are from that Exorcist movie.
Okay.
That continues. So
I feel like that was a big plot hole though. Like, how did this item with this priest?
I'm pretty
get to
sure,
this house?
if I'm not mistaken, it originates from Africa, if I'm not mistaken.
Egypt, yep.
Egypt. So yeah.
Egypt's in Africa.
Yeah. So from Africa. I think in the later movies, there's better there's like they go back and kind of explain it better. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's one of those movies that just scared the crap out of all of them. Freddy was good, but I think The Exorcist, just being, a child.
So that's where, like I was saying, like watching this movie, I had a hard time getting into it just because I felt like I knew what was going to happen next.
Yeah.
But I had Cruz in my ear going, remember how this was during the time, Alex?
Yeah.
Remember what this would have been like in 1973?
But I had to do that with a lot of them just because you got to remember the time frame of when those movies came out. I think in the future, a better one probably should have been Poltergeist. I think would have been a better.
Still haven't seen that one either.
Yeah, would have been a better one for you.
But for ranking The Exorcist, thinking about it in the scope of 1973, for how much it's been parodied, for how much has it influenced everything, and just for how gosh darn scary it was.
Yeah,
I would say this might be our only contender
for S
tier.
Yes,
I would say S tier, if not A.
Correct. Yeah, S tier or A plus in that realm.
It is by far one of the scariest movies.
Still is.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It was so well written,
Yes.
other than a couple plot holes that I've already pointed out.
Yeah,
But like
I
the
think
special effects in 1973, it was done very well.
it's impressive.
And this is why, like, we see what The Exorcist was in 1973,
Mhm.
and this is why I had such a hard time with Halloween. Like 5 years later, this was our quality of storytelling.
Yeah.
Granted, one was a studio production, and one was kind of just a home video.
Yeah.
So I feel like that in mind, like maybe we should bump Halloween up, but maybe we should keep it where it is.
I think we keep it where it is.
And maybe one day we do let's watch all the Halloweens
Yeah.
and we rank them all.
Yeah. That I think you will enjoy the future films. Again, that was the entry, so I had to give it to you.
So in the year 2030, we'll be ranking Halloween's 1 through
45.
25. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had 3 movies left on the list. Let's just go with the next one. It was probably my least favorite,
Hmm.
Hellraiser. It was interesting. I expected name's Pinhead, right? The dude with
Pinhead.
Pinhead.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like that was a stupid question, but I expected Pinhead to be more like he was integral to the movie. I expected him to be in the movie more.
Yeah. So it's one of those movies that has. I feel like there was more storytelling than anything else. It was scary just because of who the character is, right?
Mhm.
And moving into the future, there's more weird, like almost like futuristic weird.
They're Cenobites.
Yeah.
That's what they're called, right?
Yes.
So
So
it's like this idolization of masochism where they have no differentiation between pain and pleasure.
correct
So pain is pleasure to them.
for them. Yep.
The whole aspect of, the puzzle box
Mhm.
there, then the blood getting introduced
Yeah.
to the room, and the guy kind of coming back to life and having to murder to rebuild himself, and
Yeah.
with his ex-girlfriend, which is his
Correct.
brother's wife, whatever the whole love triangle
Yeah.
was, whatever it was. It was very interesting.
Yeah. That's
I felt that, not having grown up watching the movie,
Mhm.
seeing how much Pinhead is in that movie. I just want to call him
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hellraiser. How much Pinhead is like used to market
Yeah.
the movie. I didn't feel like Pinhead was in it enough.
No, it wasn't. And then again, it's one of those, and I'll keep on saying it because these are the first films in long-lasting franchises. Because Hellraiser has 5 or 6 films now
Mhm.
too. With the last being in the mid 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. Again, you got introduced to Pinhead. Moving forward,
Becomes more.
it becomes more.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say, just based off of what I saw, I'd say low CD.
I'm gonna say just a C. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't very scary either. It was just weird, kind of that, just because like you described, that pain
Yeah.
kind of like
Like the Room of Chains was cool looking.
Yeah.
But if you ask me, like, hey, do you want to
Yeah.
watch Halloween or do you want to
Yeah.
watch Hellraiser? I'm gonna say Halloween.
Halloween. Yeah.
2 movies left.
Mm-hmm.
Evil Dead. Dude,
Yes.
I loved this movie.
I'm glad
I
you
ended
did.
up pirating it. I did not pirate this movie. I ended up watching it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting. I enjoyed the movie so much that I then watched like The Evil Dead in 5 minutes. Like the entire like timeline of this
Yeah.
movie in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a crazy franchise.
Yeah. I mean, it has a TV show. It has video games.
Mhm.
It's one of the better franchises. I think the third film gets kind of wacky, like comical wacky,
Mhm.
but it's still good though. It is still very good. To me, it's an A. I
agree.
love him as an actor. He is the perfect guy for this film.
I love the relationship between Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
The fact that Sam Raimi tries to bring Bruce Campbell into like every project he does
Yeah.
as a cameo.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that relationship and that
Yeah.
little like nod to the fans who have followed
Yeah.
them. The only reason I'm not going to say higher than A is the continuity.
Yes, correct.
Like the changing of actors and actresses, I don't mind. But like there's just like a little bit where you watch the recaps at the beginning of each movie where they kind of retell a story
Mm-hmm.
and they shift
Mm-hmm.
how they almost like how they wish they had told the story
Yeah.
opposed to how they're going to let the existing story affect the ongoing narrative.
Yeah.
It's almost like I wish they had continued and made an idea of like this is where we want the franchise to go.
Yeah.
Let's divide it up into 5 movies, not opposed to, okay, we did a movie, but if we didn't kill this person, we could have done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I mean, for a lot of these movies, like who thought they would become these multi-film
Correct.
franchises?
No one, no, I mean,
So
you
you do
never
what you
know.
do.
Yeah. And I love it because of his overacting at times in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, he's like the horror Ernest.
Yes, that is a really good description.
Yeah.
No, I'd say I think it's the top of our A.
Yeah.
I think it's above Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. It's again, and it's a classic. It's still relevant, man. It's still relevant.
So this last one,
Mm-hmm.
this is the only movie that I was able to watch during the night.
Yeah.
Puppet Master.
Yeah.
I love this movie. It is hysterical.
It is funny. I wanted you to watch this movie because you are surrounded, just like I am, by toys and large 12-inch figures and 16-inch figures, and you're down here a lot by
Dude,
yourself.
Let's be real. Puppet Master is the horror equivalent of Small Soldiers.
100%.
That's all it is.
Yes.
And maybe that's why I freaking loved it.
Yeah.
It is
And the
most-
puppets
Yeah.
are perfect.
and they have their
they're
individual personalities.
Yes.
Dude, I started looking up like where could I buy like an actual like blade puppet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because I loved it so much. I found one, it was $350, and I'm like, I'm not spending that
Yeah.
much money on this. But I looked at it because I loved the reactions. The
Mhm.
fact that every puppet had a different personality,
Unique.
had different reactions, had
Yes.
different characteristics. And the fact that the whole movie opens up with the original Puppet Master
Mhm.
creating the Jester puppet
Yes.
and giving a little like the trance of piece of my soul into
Mhm.
you, whatever the incantation is. And you could see that a different part of the soul. And then we find the letters later in the movie. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I have one glaring issue with this movie.
Okay.
Maybe I just missed it, but I feel like it's a massive plot hole. How did he become a living puppet? It didn't make sense.
It didn't make no.
It made no sense to me. He was alive.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not familiar with the Puppet Master, basically this one guy calls all of his friends who have a gift of ESP known as magicians
Yep.
to come find this Puppet Master's box that has an Egyptian incantation of how to make inanimate objects animate and be alive.
Yep.
So he ends up killing himself, and then everyone's like looking at him like, "How are you alive?" Like, "Well, I'm immortal now." "Well, how'd you do it?" He goes, "Oh, well, it's simple metaphysics, my dear. All I simply did was kill myself on the physical plane and then insert my consciousness on the metaphysical plane."
Yep.
And I'm like, okay,
So how do you do that?
but how'd you kill yourself on the physical plane, utter the incantation after you're dead,
Yeah.
and then now become immortal?
Yeah.
Like that to me didn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I was expecting like his wife to secretly be evil the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I loved her as the love interest for like I think the guy's name was Alex.
Yeah.
In the movie. I loved her as the love interest for Alex, but her husband literally died like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And now you're already like this faux love interest for this guy.
Hey,
Like,
listen.
man, they move
People
quick
move
out there.
fast in the
They move
80s.
fast in the 80s. Fast times.
Fast times.
at that at the
Yeah.
hotel there.
Yeah.
But
So-
it was good.
Yeah, it's good. And it's one of those franchises. It also became a franchise.
6 movies
Yes.
in the franchise.
Yes.
6 of them.
Yeah.
Dude, we went and we
But-
watched the trailers. They're freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, but you know, in the 80s, man, they were making movies like if it hit just slightly, they were making another one and another one back to back and releasing almost every year they were releasing a new movie for the franchise. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the list I gave you. I think that was a good start.
It was phenomenal. I think what was funny just with like the Puppet Master sequels, you could see like in the original movie, the puppets were like the antagonists
Yes,
until like the guy was the antagonist.
correct.
But you could see how they tried to keep the puppets of being this antagonistic force
Mm-hmm.
until like movie 4 or 5, where they befriend this teenager,
Yeah,
and it's now like Toy Story, which is funny because like
yeah.
I
Like an
wanna
evil
say-
Toy Story.
Yes, like I want to say
They try to
Puppet
protect
Master
them,
4
kind
and
of.
5
Yeah.
came out like mid 90s,
Mm-hmm.
which would fall in line with Small Soldiers
Mm-hmm.
and Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, as these movies about like toys being friends with children,
They evolve.
these puppets now are friends with this like genius who like does the computer encryption with the
Yeah.
green text.
Yeah.
I can't. But where do you put Puppet Master?
So I'm gonna give it a solid B. Maybe B plus. I like it. It's one of those that isn't too scary. The idea, the concept of it was really cool, right? You also had like it was competing with Chucky at the time too, you know, which was the toy kind of. I give it a B. I give it a B.
I agree. I think it's the top of our B. I would put it above Troll.
Yeah.
It was crazy kooky fun.
Yeah.
Gosh, I sound old tonight.
Yeah.
Crazy
Okay.
kooky.
It's what
and
happens when you watch a ton of
Razinated.
70 and 80s movies. You get all the lingo
Gee
from those.
willikers, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah,
Oh, my
man.
Dude, so the top of our horror list,
Mm-hmm.
we had The Exorcist.
Correct.
And the bottom, the lowest ranked movie that we have, Hellraiser.
Yes.
I'm pretty satisfied with this list. This was pretty good.
Yeah. I think it was a good start for you with that horror, era. I think that was a good start.
It definitely was. The only one that actually like spooked me was The Exorcist.
Yeah.
But having seen it so heavily
Yeah.
parodied, it wasn't that bad. I realized watching these movies that I'm not anti-horror. I like as a kid, I know this sounds stupid. Scooby-Doo Zombie Island scared me so bad as a child that it made me not want to watch horror at all.
Funny.
Like the scene as a kid watching the ladies in the Baton Rouge area
Mhm.
turn into like the demonic cat people with all the zombies.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, no, that gave me nightmares.
Yeah.
I did not want to watch horror after that. Watching these movies that you recommended to me, for most of them, I found myself laughing more than being scared.
Yeah. Yeah. It was that time period, man. It's just there was comical. I think there was comical stuff in almost all the horror. It was just great, man. It wasn't I don't know how to explain it. It was just great era.
It was. And I'm looking forward to watching some more horror
Yeah.
movies and seeing like how the Halloween franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, the Hellraiser franchise, how these all progress
Correct.
and like did they get better?
Yeah.